This is the Convene Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Convene Talk. My name is Maggie, digital media editor, and today Curt will introduce our topic. So, Curt, go right ahead.
Thanks, Maggie. I'm Curt Wagner, digital editor, and I thought since, as we're recording this, Earth Day was yesterday, that we would talk about a story that Barbara wrote that talks about the Earth Day theme this year and about things that are happening in the events industry and with event venues, I guess. And so the theme for Earth Day this year is planet versus plastic. And I thought that was interesting because some of the numbers blew me away. She reported that Earth Day Org wants to reduce all plastic production by 60% by 2040 and phase out single-use plastics by 2030. And that's because there's like 100 million, tons of plastic created every year. And I found some other stats. According to the International Union of Conservation of Nature, at least 14 million tons of plastic end up in the ocean every year. And plastic debris is currently the most abundant type of litter in the ocean, making up 80% of all marine debris found from surface waters to deep sea sediments. And according to Ocean Conservancy, it's 11 million metric tons of plastic per year. But that's on top of an estimated 200 million metric tons that currently already is circulating out there in the oceans. And it's been found in more than 60% of all seabirds and in 100% of all sea turtle species. And that also, when that plastic breaks up, it doesn't do much for humans either, I don't think. But what I found interesting about the story was I always think about plastic bottles, but she had a stat about 4 billion single-use cups are created by the events industry a year. And I didn't even think about that. And that made me start thinking about when venues have things set up like convention centers, a lot of convention centers are doing good work where they're trying to reduce plastic use and stuff like that in their dining rooms and also with bottles and stuff. But I remember most convention centers have either a coffee shop or a Starbucks or something along those lines. And I was thinking about convening leaders this year, how many times I went down to the Starbucks and got a cup of something cold that was in a plastic cup. You know, they use paper cups for their warm stuff, but the plastic cups were for cold beverages. And plus people bought a lot of water bottles, a lot of water down there, I think. So that's another thing that can be looked into, is making your outside stores that are within your venue also follow suit. But I guess I just wanted to also talk about that. The good part of that story was the things that are being done. And I'll let Barbara tell more about that. But I love that the industry is also doing stuff like the Net Zero Carbon Pledge, which started in 2021. Apparently, before the end of 2024, they're supposed to publish their pathway to achieve net zero by 2050. So that's something that we can all look forward to or make sure happens. Put a little pressure on them to make sure it happens, to see what those are, because those are sort of the way that they're going to achieve these results. And that's more for GHG emissions. But what was the other thing? And just convention centers like New Orleans is doing a lot of stuff. Monterey, which Barbara mentioned, is doing a lot of work. And I also wanted to bring up, and we can talk about this because I thought this was important, is that even though the venues and places like that are sort of buying in, you need buying from everybody. And I know that a lot of times when budget constraints happen, that's sometimes one of the first things to go, is to just say, well, if our venue is doing this, we don't need to do anything within our organization or for our meeting beyond what our venue is doing already for sustainability. And I think it needs to have buy-in everywhere. And Michelle just recently wrote a story about some surveys that showed how organizers feel about sustainability. And it was kind of a mixed bag of results. So Barbara, start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Curt. This is Barbara Palmer. I'm deputy editor. I really loved this Earth Day theme because I feel like there's so much of sustainability that is really complicated. And then just even the net zero carbon pledge, there's just a lot of questions about measurement and who's responsible, but single-use plastics, there's just not a lot of controversy over whether we should use them or not. I mean, they're so destructive and they are so much a part of our lives. The statistic that shocked me was US use of single-use plastic bottles per capita. It was 300 bottles a year per American. And 95% plastic does not get recycled. And I feel like what has happened, and people smarter than me have pointed this out, that we've kind of used recycling as a panacea and said, oh, but this is recyclable. And just like, even since we've been talking about the damage of plastic, then seeing pictures of rivers in Central America clogged with water bottles, the production of virgin plastic has continued to go up. What I liked about our world and what our world does is they wash glasses and bring them back to the venue. And they can't keep up with the demand because so many venues want to use them now. But I feel like it's kind of this behavioral change. I don't know about you all, but when I see a beautiful stage with a panel sitting there, and they've got plastic water bottles sitting on all the tables, it's like, I think, oh, that's not good. And I hope this is true. I feel like the last plastic bottle of water I bought, I hope will be my last, because it was at a play. Was it in Berkeley? And it's like a place where, the bottle was as innocuous as it could be in terms of guaranteed recyclable, made of recyclable, going to be recycled. But I felt embarrassed buying it. And it was like, this is just a total lack of planning on my part, that I didn't have a water bottle. I didn't, and I just feel like it's so many venues are making it the way that you do things. And as people get used to that, then that will just be the way we do things. At San Francisco airport, there's a wonderful water bottle filling station. It's not where you stand in line, like, behind 10 people to fill your water bottle. There's like, 6 or 7 places. You can pick the temperature. You don't splash water on the floor. And it just becomes part of what you do. Like, oh, I'm checking in. Where's my water bottle? And I feel like I feel like now enough people in the events industry are on board with ending single-use plastic. They'll be doing these things to scale, and our behavior really will change. So I was very glad to see something that I don't hear anyone arguing for single-use plastic, except for emergencies, or, I mean, I'm sure there's some uses that can't be avoided, but the avoidable ones, I think we can take care of those.
I think the plastics industry is probably for more plastic bottles, but I noticed that there's some plastic manufactured organization with a meeting coming up, and they have a huge sustainability section now in the plan for their event, which I'm curious as to what that would be. But because, I mean, basically they have to stop making plastic, right? That's how that has to work, or reduce it a lot. But yeah. But for the buy-in, though, I was wondering, Michelle, what do you think about organizers doing? Do you think more organizers are going to buy into it, and organizations are going to say, I know it's going to cost more to do this, but we're in.
Well, I think to Barbara's point, I don't know that that's something that's an extra charge, right? It's just I think buying water bottles for your attendees is probably more expensive than having a station where they can fill up their own water bottle. It's funny you talked about the plastics industry, because I did see when I was looking at the theme for this year's Earth Day, I did see that America's plastic makers have a website called Making Sustainable Change. And they did talk about how they are using more higher performing materials, working to recover, recycle, and reuse many of the world's plastic resources. So people don't have to choose between the benefits of plastics and a cleaner environment. I think there are other industries where plastic is unavoidable, like healthcare. So there are things that, I don't know how you replace those single-use plastic items in healthcare. If you've been to a hospital recently or gone to a doctor's office, you just see it's the way that the healthcare industry, how the products are packaged, and to keep them safe. And I think for events, though, it's very easy for us to really stop using it. There was a whole backlash, though, Barbara. Remember the whole backlash with the plastic straws, where people were like almost making fun of that being something that people were hanging on to as something we could do. No more single-use plastic straws. I haven't heard that anymore. But for a while there, that was an amenity, was to get a glass straw instead.
Or a stainless steel,
Or a
Yes.
stainless steel one. But I do remember people poking fun at that and saying, really, is this how you think we're going to solve the issue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and another part of that story was about the efforts at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, particularly their events and catering department, to get rid of single-use plastic. And at the aquarium, they decided to get rid of all the plastic in their gift shop and their restaurant at the aquarium. And what was interesting is it took a really long time. It took them years to just methodically go through everything. But it changed their supply chain. The people, when they would go to it's a company called SSA, and say, we don't want you to put we don't want to sell these puzzles wrapped in plastic. So the company went, oh, well, we can sell them without plastic. And then they found that other customers wanted the boxes of puzzles without plastic. One of the things that they did was when their linens came back from their linen service, they were wrapped in plastic. And so they talked with the provider about how they could do it differently. And the provider came up with just these reusable crates. So they brought the linens in these crates. They picked up the dirty linens in the crates. And that's how they started delivering their linens to all their customers, because it was it was in Monterey, and it was a boon. So it's kind of like, I feel like, one plastic bottle is not going to make a big difference. But if you stop using it and everyone around you stop using it, and most importantly, you find these alternatives that are not only easy and can, right there, but they're more pleasant. I mean, it's more pleasant to drink out of a glass. I see your hand up, Jen. What are you thinking?
Thanks, Barbara. This is Jen, senior editor. I like what you just said. I think hits the nail on the head, is that I think it's so frustrating, because we can do all this work to recycle and find alternatives, but when you look into the bigger, broader picture, not just our industry, but plastics and other. But what I was going to say is, when you look at the broader picture, we're all scurrying around doing all this work to recycle. There's so much, like you said, Michelle, there's so much plastic. It's literally everywhere. It's inescapable. But the fact of the matter is, very little of it gets properly recycled. And even the amount that does get properly recycled, it gets sent. It was, for a long time, we sent it off to China and they buried it. And, we just don't have a way to get rid of it or a way to, make it into something else that actually gets used, like a large enough percentage of it for it to really count. And that's so frustrating because like I remember, or I sort my plastics and I sort my recyclables, at home, but I know just from having done the research, it ends up in the trash, like most of it. And I think that's the case for a lot of cities. And I don't want to speak for other countries, but I think other countries that I've traveled to, I noticed they have as big or an even larger problem with that. So I think where I get frustrated is like we can do all these things at a granular level, at a local level, as much as we can, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like a drop in the bucket. And because the plastics industry is so powerful and it's in everything. And then when you couple that with, like you said, there's just not a lot of alternatives out there yet. Like, what is the bigger solution? I'd love to know. I wish Carolina was on our call because I'd love to hear what she thinks and what if there's things that she's learned about that she's hopeful for. But I think, maybe that's where meetings come in, is gathering these experts and finding solutions to an industry that's really pervasive. And I don't know what the answer is, but it's hard knowing that we're making all this effort when it's really just a drop in the bucket.
I'm going to make a shameless plug for Convene because a while ago we had a story that was on we call them eyebrow headlines, which are the top like 3 stories at the top of the print magazine, just a little teaser. And one of them was no more plastic. And someone wrote in and said, I found this really ironic because my issue of Convene was wrapped in plastic. And the fact is that we don't use plastic. Lane Press, our printer, uses something that looks like plastic, but it is biodegradable cornstarch. So it completely is biodegradable. And I think a lot of people make assumptions about things without knowing that there are other things that are being done to help with that. It's more expensive to use recyclable paper for the magazine than to use virgin paper. Like, who knew? Why would that be the case? But that is the case. The paper that we use is more expensive than if we went with virgin paper. So sometimes, you want to do the right thing, but you are prevented from doing the right thing. Not in our case, because we do use recycled paper. But I think planners often are stuck between a rock and a hard place because some of those things cost more and their budgets are cut back. So you have to make a call whether you're going to be more sustainable or you're going to be more budget friendly.
This is Casey, managing editor. I was going to say the same thing, just that I get the sense from a lot of our readers that based on some of their feedback, it seems like sustainability is still stuck in a place of nice to have versus must have. And that's just because of budget constraints, which is why I think it's good that the Earth Day focus this year was on plastics, because that does seem like a more cost-effective approach you can take to make your event a little bit more sustainable. I think it's just hard for a lot of planners to figure out how to really work sustainability into their meetings in a meaningful way, because a lot of these things are very expensive. And right now they're contending with inflation and lower staffing and all these other issues that are really making it hard to make that a priority.
Yeah, I kind of wish Carolina was here too, because I remember her talking at CL23, I think it was. She was talking about, what does she call it? Sustainability by design, and how you sort of have to have that whole thing built into your organization.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't just do it per event.
Right.
You sort of have to have it in there and have it be a, what do you want to call it? A vein throughout your organization or something like that. Yeah. Which I always thought was interesting and cool. Barbara.
I remember just these kind of standoffs between the suppliers and the organizers over costs. Like, you don't have it. It's too expensive for me to bring it in. And the supplier saying there's not enough demand for it for scale. And I do I do think that maybe that balance has tipped because so many venues that understand that sustainability is a selling point. Like if I go to a hotel, I used to not even think about loading my purse up with all the water bottles they would give me when I checked in, so I would stay hydrated. Now I don't, that doesn't make me feel good. It makes me feel good if I see, oh, there's a place where I can fill up a water bottle right off the lobby. I do think that idea that either planners or suppliers alone are responsible has definitely changed. And I think it's the Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle. Their plan was to be entirely single-use plastics free this year. So if you go there, you know it's not a dilemma. Do I do it or do I not? It is, as you said, Curt, built into the design of the event. And like anything else, when you change, there's an investment of, you kind of have to invest in change. But over time, I think it's in the big picture, of course, it's less expensive to not poison ourselves with plastic. Some of the most alarming things that I've read really just recently is how pervasive plastics are in our bodies, that, babies in utero, they find plastic, like babies are born with microplastic in their bloodstream. And I just feel once people really grasp, like it's in our soil. It's like if it's like it's everywhere. And I think once people really understand that that is the cost isn't like, oh, you know, three, I don't know, 10% more. The cost is how we're poisoning ourselves and our environment. What are you thinking, Michelle?
I'm thinking that everybody here on the call has glasses that are plastic except for Jen. All of us have plastics, somehow in our life. I was really surprised. I was at a hotel in Washington, D.C., major chain, 2 weeks ago, and they still had the plastic bottles. The toiletries were still in the small bottles. And so it just made me think, okay, you can have a meeting planner who tries every which way to make sure that every part of the experience of the attendee, there's a lack of plastics. It's very clear. But then they go to the hotel, they can't tell the hotel you're going to have to change your policy. This is just not going to be in sync with our goal of zero single-use plastic. So it needs to be a mind shift across all different industries. And I know that, I think we wrote about this in our forecast in November. I know California and New York are 2 states where single-use plastic toiletry is no longer allowed. But those are only two states in a very big country. And Maggie, I don't know, what is the experience at hotels in other parts of the world? I think in Europe, it's not as common to have those little sample toiletries.
I'd say it depends where you go. Always, even within the European Union, yes, there are some standards that all countries must follow, but still it depends on so many things. And what I find also in the industry is that there are a lot of pledges, but that's yeah, I raise my hand and I swear, it's like a pinky swear for me. And while there are a lot of pledges and a lot of people raise their hands, I feel the action is not adequate. But at the same time, like what Barbara just said, with the realizing that plastic is in us already, it's everywhere. It's such a huge problem that it kind of suffocates us. And we're like, okay, the problem is already so large. So how can we make change? And I think really the answer is, again, this example from Monterey, just ask your suppliers, make it a statement. I'm ready not to do business with you if you don't change next time around, because that's how I want to operate. And if you don't change your ways, I'm going to operate with somebody else. And this is really how things change and evolve. It's not by blaming or shaming or presenting the huge numbers with the huge problem. It's really working together and requesting the change. And I think it also comes from us as consumers. It's not because there's a lot of pointing fingers between event planners and venues and suppliers and who's responsible. But at the end of the day, it comes back to us as human beings living on this planet. And I heard this weekend. I watched a documentary, and it was very powerful because the person said, we call it Mother Earth, and then look at what we've done to our mother. And I felt like, oh, this is just right in the heart, because nobody wants to treat their mother like that. And indeed, that's what we've done to our planet. But I thought, for me, that was it shook me up. I was like, wake up. Is this what you want to really do to your closest? So that was something very, very powerful. And I think that's where we should start. Really stop blaming, shaming, or thinking of governments or countries or unions or like pledges. Let's start small and just make it a habit of asking for others to follow suit and not just raise their hands and say like, yeah, I think it's fair. So we can see more good examples as Monterey happened.
Right. I just changed my glasses to my metal ones so that I wouldn't have my plastic ones on. But then I realized these little things are plastic right here. So I can't get away from it. And these are plastic. But I do donate these whenever I get rid of them. Monterey, that's amazing that they were able to get vendors to change their practice. I think that's incredible that they were able to do that, and that it had a ripple effect too for those companies to do it elsewhere and possibly do it without being just make it a general thing. I mean, I'm in Berlin right now, and I love that when you go to a lot of places, they don't use plastic bags. I feel like sometimes I'm back in the day, they wrap things still in paper sometimes. Like food, sometimes when you get food, they just wrap it in paper and fold it up. They have a way of folding it up that keeps it closed. And I love that. I love seeing that because I have like 50 reusable bags here. I actually brought my reusable bags from Chicago when I moved here. I brought about half of what I had. And so like I never use the plastic whenever it's available.
Casey and I can tell you that there are no plastic bags in New Jersey. In our state,
Yep.
you cannot. You have to bring your own recyclable bag, or I think you have to pay for paper. They charge you for paper if you go to the grocery store.
Yeah, it seems
So-
to depend on the store, but you can only get paper. No more plastic.
No plastic.
Chicago has that rule too now, I think, where you have to pay extra for if you don't bring, well, not if you don't, you bring your own, but if you use plastic from them. Yeah, which is good. But I like those things, and I'm not, what is that called? Virtue, whatever it's called.
Signaling.
But
Virtue
yeah, I'm not
signaling.
virtue signaling because I've become addicted to fizzy water, and so I've been sort of abusive of the plastic fizzy water bottles. I try to buy the glass, but those have to be recycled too. But you're right, maybe we need to all do our own thing too, and I think if the habit starts at home, it spreads, right?
Yeah, and sometimes, there are examples out there where people gather together and can change their local community or work with their, local mayor and make some changes happen, not only for plastic, but for other kinds of pollutants. So there are many things that you really have to just work together.
That's one of the things about events is that they are so large scale. Like, if it's a really big event, it can really make a difference. And we also learn from each other. I wish I could remember her name, but I went to an event and met a woman from Santa Cruz who was really passionate about single-use plastic. And she talked about how, if you go to a hotel and they don't have any place to fill up your water bottle, go to the gym. They often have little, they have water at the gym for people that are exercising. And I just thought, people actually, your water bottle is kind of an expression of your personality. Maybe that's a little far-fetched, but I do identify, people with their water bottles. Oh, she's look at, and what if we all just brought our own bags to call, what if we just didn't use all this stuff we don't need? I think it would feel better. I don't think we're aware of how much we don't like opening those little plastic things and having somebody put 6 ketchup things in their takeout bag. And then you're like, I put them in the drawer because I don't want to throw them away until I realize they've been here for
5
6
years.
months. And like, so we would be doing each other a favor by thinking about these things and just taking time. That's part of it too, is just plastic a lot of the time is convenient and it maybe takes a little bit more time, but that can be time spent well.
I wonder, could I get rid of single-use plastics in my living space? And I'm thinking no, but I would really have to work hard to do that. And I don't even think that I use a ton of it, but you don't even think about some of the stuff. And, you know,
Our glasses, though, are not single use.
no.
Thank God.
It's just that plastic is ubiquitous and
Yeah.
we don't know. It's in our soils everywhere. We don't know how it's breaking down and in our bloodstream. And we take it for granted because it's just a part of our life. I remember the Dustin Hoffman movie where it was like plastics, that's the wave of the future. And that wasn't that long ago. It was only
It was not that long ago. My dad was a research scientist in a petroleum company, and our next door neighbor was one of the inventors of the kind of plastic that is everywhere. It just wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't.
I didn't use plastic. We, washed out jars. Bread came in plastic bags and rinsed them out and put them on the clothesline because, you didn't go to
Use them
the
again.
store and buy. Pardon me?
Because you could use them again. Yeah.
Yeah. So that really wasn't that long ago. My daughter's wedding anniversary is on Earth Day yesterday. And so I wanted to buy her just as a present, just some beautiful glass refrigerator storage. And I couldn't find any that didn't have plastic lids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm thinking maybe I'll find them at flea markets but I think that's going to be my new thing I look for because I couldn't find them anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen any without plastic lids.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least the snaps are plastic. The glass
Yeah.
might be in the center.
Yeah.
The snaps are plastic, yeah.
But one other thing, I just remembered, I read somewhere that plastic is a great material. It's just misused. We
Yeah.
just put it in so many different uses that we could have done something else. So it's not really also plastic's fault. It's a good material, but it's just for very specific things to be used. It's not like what we do with the plastic cups. That's really a thing. And I feel also it was a thing in movies, right? How you stay by the water cooler, you drink from one of those single-use cups and you throw it away. It was kind of a gesture, right? And I think that's how we pick up a lot of those things. Also with the plastic water bottles. If you do a sport, you need to have one of those plastic water bottles. It used to be a thing. And now when we see somebody with a plastic water bottle, we're like, ugh, why?
It was kind of correct me if I'm wrong, it was kind of a status symbol.
Yeah.
To have this certain kind of water in a plastic bottle.
Well, it's fresh mountain water.
Yeah. It was,
i.e. tap water from somewhere else.
it was associated with health and
Yeah.
fitness, which is ironic.
Yeah.
But what did they say? When you know better, you do better. So I think the
that's the
events
case.
industry knows better and is doing better in very encouraging spots.
Yes. So keep it up, events
Yeah.
industry.
We can definitely do more. And there will be a lot of links in the show notes. And to our listeners that got here, don't forget to give us a good review and subscribe and listen to the series and the other stuff we're putting out there. And until next time.